No one expected a starving orphan to interrupt the most lavish feast in Dubai's history, but when those words left his mouth, the golden fork clattered onto the marble floor, and the palace erupted into chaos. What the boy had witnessed in the shadows would expose a betrayal so deep, it would shake the foundations of one of the wealthiest families in the Middle East. It was a scorching August afternoon in Dubai when 11-year-old Rashid crouched behind a dumpster in the alley behind the Burj Al Aziz, the newest and most opulent palace in the emirate. His clothes were tattered rags, his bare feet burned from the sun-heated pavement, and his stomach ached from 3 days without food. Rashid had been an orphan for 2 years now, ever since his parents died in a construction accident. With no relatives to claim him, he'd slipped through the cracks of the system, surviving on the streets by his wits and the occasional kindness of strangers. The palace loomed above him, 70 stories of gold-plated magnificence, home to Prince Khalid al-Rashid, one of the wealthiest men in the UAE. Today was a special occasion. The prince was hosting a celebration for his wedding anniversary, the 10th year of marriage to Princess Amara, a woman whose beauty was legendary throughout the Arab world. Hundreds of guests, dignitaries from around the globe, were arriving in limousines and helicopters. Rashid wasn't interested in the celebration. He was interested in the garbage. Rich people threw away more food in a day than he saw in a month. If he could just get to the kitchen disposal area before the security guards made their rounds, he might find enough scraps to last him several days. But as he crept closer to the service entrance, he saw something that made him pause. A woman emerged from a black SUV in the underground parking area. She was beautiful, dressed in an abaya that probably cost more than most people earned in a year, but it was her face that caught Rashid's attention. He'd seen that face before, on billboards and magazines throughout the city. Princess Amara. What was odd was that she'd arrived in a plain vehicle, not the prince's official motorcade, and she wasn't entering through the main entrance where the guests were arriving. She was sneaking in through the service entrance, moving quickly, looking over her shoulder. Rashid's survival instinct told him something was wrong. When you lived on the streets, you learned to notice things, and everything about this felt off. He watched as Princess Amara moved through the service corridor. Rashid knew this area well. He'd mapped every entrance and exit of the palace during his months of scavenging. He followed her, staying in the shadows, his small size and dark skin making him nearly invisible in the dim lighting. The princess made her way to the kitchen area. It was chaos there, dozens of chefs and servers preparing the enormous feast. But she didn't go to the main kitchen. Instead, she slipped into a smaller preparation room, one used for the prince's personal meals. Rashid found a ventilation grate near the ceiling. Years of climbing and squeezing through tight spaces made it easy for him to reach it. He peered through the metal slats and watched. Princess Amara looked around nervously, then pulled out a small vial from inside her abaya. Even from his hiding spot, Rashid could see her hands shaking. She approached a covered silver platter, one marked with the royal seal, the prince's personal meal. She lifted the cover. Inside was an elaborate dish, lamb kabsa from what Rashid could tell, garnished with saffron and gold leaf, the kind of meal Rashid had only dreamed about. Then Princess Amara did something that made Rashid's blood run cold. She uncapped the vial and poured a clear liquid over the food, mixing it carefully with a golden spoon from the tray. She worked quickly, professionally, as if she'd practiced this. When she was done, she replaced the cover, disposed of the vial in her purse, and left as quietly as she'd come. Rashid's mind raced. He'd seen enough crime on the streets to know what poisoning looked like. But why would the princess poison her own husband's food, and what should he do about it? The smart thing would be to do nothing, mind his own business. A street kid accusing a princess of attempted murder. He'd be thrown in jail or worse. No one would believe him. But Rashid couldn't shake the image of that vial, that clear liquid being mixed into the prince's food. If he said nothing, a man would die. Maybe the prince was a good man, maybe he wasn't. Rashid didn't know, but he knew murder was wrong. He climbed down from his perch and tried to figure out his next move. The feast was starting in an hour. Security around the palace was impossibly tight. How could a homeless boy get close enough to the prince to warn him? Then he had an idea. The servers. They were bringing out the food now. dozens of them carrying trays through the corridors. In the chaos and rush, maybe he could blend in. He was small, but he could pass for a young server if he was quick and confident. Rashid found a service uniform hanging in a laundry area. It was too big for him, but he rolled up the sleeves and pants. He grabbed an empty tray and joined the stream of servers, heading toward the grand dining hall. The hall was breathtaking. Rashid had never seen such luxury. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars, marble floors inlaid with precious stones, walls covered in gold leaf. Hundreds of guests in designer clothes and traditional Arab dress filled the space, talking and laughing. At the head table, elevated on a dais, sat Prince Khalid. He was younger than Rashid expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Next to him sat Princess Amara, looking radiant in an emerald green gown, playing the role of devoted wife perfectly. Rashid moved through the crowd, trying to look like he belonged. No one paid attention to a servant. He was invisible, just like on the streets. But now that invisibility was an advantage. He watched as servers brought out course after course, appetizers, soups, salads. The guests ate and drank and celebrated. Musicians played traditional Emirati music. Dancers performed. It was the kind of opulence Rashid couldn't have imagined in his wildest dreams. Then he saw it. A server carrying the covered silver platter with the royal seal. The prince's personal dish, the poisoned one. The server approached the head table. Prince Khalid was deep in conversation with a dignitary, laughing at some joke. He didn't notice the server setting down the platter in front of him. Rashid moved quickly. He pushed through the crowd of servers, ignoring the angry looks and whispered curses. He had to reach the prince before he ate. Security noticed him. A large guard in a black suit started moving toward him. "Hey, boy, what are you doing?" Rashid broke into a run. He dodged between guests, jumped over a decorative fountain, and leaped onto the dais. The entire hall gasped. Music stopped. Everyone stared at this small, dirty boy in an ill-fitting uniform who'd just crashed the most exclusive party in Dubai. Prince Khalid looked at him in surprise. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" Rashid's heart was pounding. He could see more security guards rushing toward him. He had seconds before they grabbed him. He looked at the prince, then at the covered platter, then at Princess Amara, whose face had gone pale. "Your Highness!" Rashid shouted in Arabic. "Don't eat that! Your wife gave something to the cook. I saw her. She put something in your food." The hall erupted. Guests shouted. Security guards grabbed Rashid, pulling him roughly away from the prince. But Prince Khalid held up his hand. "Wait, stop." Everyone froze. The prince's voice had the absolute authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. He looked at Rashid carefully. "What did you say, boy?" Rashid struggled against the guards holding him. "Oh, your food, Your Highness. The lamb kabsa. Your wife, the princess, she came to the kitchen before the feast. I saw her. She had a small vial. She poured something into your food and mixed it in. I swear it's true." Princess Amara stood up, her face a perfect mask of outrage. "This is insane. Khalid, this child is clearly disturbed or has been put up to this by someone. I would never—" But Prince Khalid wasn't looking at his wife. He was looking at Rashid, studying him intently. "You're a street child, aren't you? I can see it. The way you move, the way you watch everything, you're used to being invisible." Rashid nodded. "Yes, Your Highness. And why should I believe you? What proof do you have?" "I have no proof, only what I saw. But I swear on my parents' graves I'm telling the truth. I saw Princess Amara come through the service entrance in a black SUV. She went to the small preparation room, the one used for your personal meals. She had a vial. She put something in the kabsa. Then she left the same way she came." The hall was silent now. Everyone watched this drama unfold. Prince Khalid looked at his wife. Something in his eyes had changed. "Amara, did you arrive through the service entrance today?" "Of course not. I came with you, Khalid. Don't let this child confuse you." But the prince shook his head slowly. "No. You arrived 30 minutes after me. You said you had to stop at the spa, remember? Where did you really go?" Amara's perfect composure cracked slightly. "I did go to the spa. Ask them." "I will." Prince Khalid turned to his head of security. "Hassan, check the security footage for the service entrance and the preparation kitchen for the past 2 hours. Now." "Your Highness, this is absurd," Amara started. and have this food tested immediately. I want to know exactly what's in it." Hassan, a stern-faced man with military bearing, nodded and spoke into his radio. Within minutes, security personnel were reviewing footage on tablets. A medical team arrived to take the food for testing. Rashid stood between two guards, his heart still pounding. He'd done what he could. Now his fate was in the hands of people far more powerful than him. The wait was excruciating. Guests whispered among themselves. Some looked scandalized, others fascinated. Princess Amara maintained her expression of wounded dignity, but Rashid could see sweat on her brow. Finally, Hassan returned. He leaned close to Prince Khalid and whispered something. The prince's face went white, then red with anger. "The footage shows exactly what the boy described. My wife entering through the service entrance, going to the preparation kitchen, approaching my personal meal." He turned to Amara, his voice shaking with rage and betrayal. "Why?" Amara's mask finally shattered, her beautiful face contorted with something ugly. "Because I'm tired of being your princess, tired of being a trophy, a pretty thing to show off at parties, tired of waiting for you to die naturally so I can finally have access to your fortune." Gasps echoed through the hall. This was more drama than most of these wealthy socialites had seen in their entire privileged lives. "We have a prenuptial agreement," Amara continued, her voice bitter. "If I divorce you, I get almost nothing. But if you die while we're still married, I inherit everything. Your wealth, your properties, your business empire, all of it. So you decided to murder me." The prince's voice was hollow with pain. "It wasn't supposed to be murder, just enough poison to make you sick, gradually failing health over months. By the time anyone suspected something, it would be too late. You'd be gone, and I'd be the grieving widow, one of the richest women in the world." The medical team returned. "Your Highness, the food contains oleander toxin, a powerful cardiac poison. The amount in this dish would have caused severe heart problems, possibly fatal." Prince Khalid looked at his wife of 10 years, the woman he'd loved and trusted, and saw a stranger. "Guards, arrest her." As security moved toward Princess Amara, she suddenly lunged, not toward the exit, but toward Rashid. Her hand flashed out, and Rashid saw the glint of metal. A knife, small and sharp, probably meant for the table setting. "If I can't have the fortune, at least I can silence the brat who ruined everything," she screamed. Everything happened in slow motion. Guards rushed forward but were too far away. Prince Khalid shouted, guests screamed, and Rashid, relying on reflexes honed by years of surviving on dangerous streets, dropped to the ground and rolled. The knife whistled through the air where his head had been. Amara stumbled off balance from her lunge. Before she could recover, guards tackled her to the ground. The knife clattered away across the marble floor. Hassan himself cuffed her wrists. "Princess Amara al-Rashid, you are under arrest for attempted murder of Prince Khalid al-Rashid and assault on a minor." As guards led her away, still screaming curses and protests, the hall remained in shocked silence. Then Prince Khalid walked over to Rashid, who was still on the ground, shaking from the adrenaline. The prince knelt beside him. "You saved my life, boy. What is your name?" "Rashid, Your Highness." "Rashid." The prince smiled sadly. "My own name. How fitting. Tell me, Rashid, where are your parents?" "Dead, Your Highness. 2 years ago. I've been living on the streets since then." "Not anymore." Prince Khalid stood and addressed the stunned crowd. "Let this be known to all present. This boy, Rashid, is under my personal protection. From this day forward, he is a ward of the royal household. He will want for nothing." He turned back to Rashid. "But first, tell me, why did you warn me? You're a street child. You could have said nothing, taken no risk. No one would have blamed you. Why did you endanger yourself for a stranger?" Rashid thought about it. "Because it was right, Your Highness. And because I know what it's like to lose family. I lost mine. I couldn't just watch while you lost yours too, even if I didn't know you were going to lose them to murder instead of an accident." The prince's eyes glistened with tears. "You have more honor in your small body than most men I know have in their entire lives. Come, let's get you cleaned up, fed and properly clothed. Tomorrow we'll talk about your future, but tonight you are my honored guest." As Prince Khalid led Rashid away from the chaos of the disrupted feast, Rashid looked back at the grand hall. Princess Amara was being led out in handcuffs, her designer gown trailing on the floor. Guests were being questioned by security. The perfect party had become a crime scene. But Rashid felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years: safety, purpose, hope. That night, after Rashid had bathed in a bathroom bigger than any home he'd ever lived in, after he'd eaten more food than he thought possible, after he'd been given clean clothes made of fabric softer than anything he'd touched, he lay in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. Prince Khalid came to check on him. "Are you comfortable, Rashid?" "Yes, Your Highness. More than I've ever been." "Good. Tomorrow we have much to discuss. But tonight, rest. You've earned it." As the prince turned to leave, Rashid called out, "Your Highness, how did you know to believe me? I'm nobody, just a street kid. You could have had me thrown out or arrested." Prince Khalid smiled. "Because I watched your eyes when you spoke. I've dealt with liars my whole life. Politicians, businessmen, even family members who want something from me. I know what deception looks like. But you? Your eyes were clear, scared, yes, but honest. That's rarer than you might think, especially in my world." "Will the princess go to prison?" "Yes, for a very long time. Attempted murder of a royal is one of the most serious crimes in our country. She'll likely spend the rest of her life locked away." His expression was pained. "I loved her once. Or I thought I did. Maybe I loved the woman I thought she was. But love built on lies isn't really love at all." After the prince left, Rashid stared at the ornate ceiling, his mind racing. His life had changed so dramatically in just a few hours. This morning he'd been digging through garbage for food scraps. Tonight he was sleeping in a palace under the protection of a prince. But something bothered him, a nagging feeling he couldn't shake. The same instinct that had made him follow Princess Amara in the first place. Something about her confession felt off. Not wrong, exactly, but incomplete. The way she'd admitted everything so readily once the evidence was presented. The theatrical lunge with the knife. It had all been very dramatic, very convenient. Rashid had survived on the streets by noticing details others missed. And he'd noticed something during Amara's outburst. When she'd ranted about being tired of being a trophy wife, about wanting the fortune, her eyes had flickered, just for a second. Flickered towards someone in the crowd. Who? Rashid had been too focused on the immediate danger to process it fully. But now, lying in the quiet darkness, he tried to remember. There had been so many guests, hundreds of faces, but one had stood out. A man, tall and distinguished, with grey in his hair and expensive Western clothes. He'd been standing near the back, partially hidden by a pillar, and when Amara had looked in his direction, he'd given the slightest shake of his head. A warning? An instruction? Rashid sat up in bed. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe the stress and exhaustion were making him see patterns that weren't there. Or maybe Princess Amara hadn't been acting alone. Maybe there was someone else involved. Someone who'd remained hidden while she took all the blame. But who? And how could Rashid find out without putting himself in more danger? He lay back down, but sleep was a long time coming. Because Rashid had learned on the streets that the first person caught wasn't always the only guilty party. Sometimes they were just the one foolish enough or loyal enough or desperate enough to take the fall. And somewhere in this vast palace, someone was very happy that Princess Amara was going to prison alone. Someone who thought they'd gotten away with it. But they hadn't counted on a street kid with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. A kid who'd survived by noticing what others missed. A kid who now had the resources and protection to dig deeper. As dawn broke over Dubai, painting the palace in shades of gold and rose, Rashid made a decision. He would find the truth. All of it. Not just for Prince Khalid, but for himself. Because if he'd learned anything in his short, hard life, it was that secrets had a way of coming back to destroy you. And this secret, whatever it was, wasn't finished destroying people yet. The next morning, Rashid woke to find expensive clothes laid out for him, a breakfast fit for royalty waiting on a cart, and Hassan, the head of security, standing by the door with an unreadable expression. "The prince wishes to see you after you've eaten," Hassan said. His voice was formal, but Rashid detected something else underneath. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. Rashid ate quickly, still unused to having unlimited food. Every instinct told him to save some, to hide pieces for later when food might not be available. But he forced himself to act normal. This was his life now. Prince Khalid received him in a private study, a room lined with books and overlooking the glittering skyline of Dubai. The prince looked tired, as if he hadn't slept. There were papers spread across his desk, legal documents with official seals. "Sit, Rashid," the prince said, gesturing to a chair. "We need to discuss your future." Rashid sat on the edge of the seat, uncomfortable with the luxury. "Your Highness, I'm grateful for everything, but I don't need much, just—" "You need everything," Prince Khalid interrupted gently. "Education, healthcare, a proper home. You're 11 years old. You should be in school, playing with friends, dreaming about your future, not scrounging in alleyways for survival. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am." "Then you'll learn. I've arranged for tutors." "The best in Dubai. You're bright, Rashid. I could see it yesterday. The way you observed, the way you thought strategically. That intelligence shouldn't be wasted." Rashid felt overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this? I know I saved your life, but—" "It's not about debt," the prince said firmly. "It's about seeing potential in someone and choosing to nurture it. My own father did something similar for me once. I was supposed to be the third son, forgotten in the line of succession, but my father saw something in me and gave me opportunities my brothers didn't receive. I became who I am because someone believed in me." He paused, looking out the window. "Besides, Amara's betrayal has taught me something. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. A street child showed more honor than my own wife. Perhaps it's time I expanded my definition of family." Rashid felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't experienced since his parents died. "I won't disappoint you, Your Highness." "I know you won't. Now there's something else, something I need your help with." Prince Khalid pulled out a folder. Inside were photographs, documents, security footage, stills. Amara's confession was too easy, too complete. She admitted everything with barely any pressure. That's not how guilty people behave, especially not ones who've been planning elaborate murders. Rashid leaned forward, his street instincts prickling. "You think someone else was involved?" "I do. And I think you might have seen something yesterday. Hassan told me you have an extraordinary memory for details. Close your eyes and think back to the moment when Amara confessed. Picture the crowd. Tell me what you remember." Rashid closed his eyes. In his mind he replayed the scene, the shocked faces, the whispers. And then, "There was a man," Rashid said slowly. "Tall, grey hair, wearing a Western suit, dark blue, expensive looking. He was standing near a pillar at the back. When Princess Amara looked his way, he shook his head, just slightly, like he was telling her to stop talking." Prince Khalid's expression darkened. "Can you describe him more?" "His face." Rashid concentrated. "Sharp features, maybe 50 years old. He had a ring on his right hand, gold with a red stone. And there was something about his eyes. Cold, like he was watching a game, not a real crisis." The prince pulled out several photographs. "Is he among these men?" Rashid studied each photo carefully. Then his finger stopped on one. "Him. That's the man I saw." Prince Khalid's jaw clenched. "Richard Morrison, my business partner. We've worked together for 5 years, developing luxury properties across the Emirates. He's made millions from our partnership. Why would he want you dead?" "Because 6 months ago I discovered discrepancies in our accounts. Money missing, contracts altered. I didn't want to believe it was Richard, so I hired private investigators. They were supposed to report back to me next week." The prince's hands curled into fists. "But if Richard knew I was investigating him, he'd need to act fast. And what better way than to use my own wife? You think he and Princess Amara were working together?" "I think Richard manipulated her. Amara wanted my money, but she's not clever enough to plan something this sophisticated. The poison choice, the timing, the method, that required someone with knowledge. Richard has a background in chemistry. He made his first fortune in pharmaceuticals before moving into real estate." Rashid processed this. So he used her as the weapon, then let her take all the blame. Exactly. And now she's in custody, unable to implicate him even if she wanted to. He probably promised her they'd be together once I was dead, that he'd help her access my fortune. But he was always planning to abandon her once the job was done. What do we do? Prince Khalid looked at the boy with newfound intensity. We? Rashid, this is dangerous. Richard Morrison is a powerful, connected man. If he was willing to poison me, he won't hesitate to eliminate anyone else who threatens him. Then we have to be smarter than him. Rashid's voice was steady. I survived 2 years on the streets because I learned to think like the people who wanted to hurt me. I know how dangerous men operate. The prince studied him for a long moment. You're certain you want to help? I can protect you, keep you safe here in the palace. You gave me a second chance at life, Your Highness. Let me help you save yours completely. Over the next week, Rashid became an unlikely investigator. His small size and innocent appearance made him perfect for surveillance. Who would suspect a child? Prince Khalid arranged for Rashid to attend a prestigious international school, which conveniently was located in the same building complex where Richard Morrison maintained an office. During lunch breaks and after school, Rashid watched, listened, and reported back. He noticed patterns. Morrison met regularly with a woman Rashid didn't recognize, always in quiet cafes, always paying in cash. He made encrypted calls from a burner phone, not his regular device. And 3 times in 1 week, he visited the prison where Princess Amara was being held. He's visiting her, Rashid told Prince Khalid during one of their evening briefings. Why would he do that if he's trying to distance himself? To make sure she stays silent, the prince replied grimly, probably threatening her or promising her legal help in exchange for not mentioning his name. Hassan, who'd become Rashid's unlikely ally in the investigation, added, We've been monitoring his communications. He's being careful, but we've intercepted some messages. He's planning to leave the country soon, probably wants to disappear before any connection to the poisoning can be established. We need proof, Prince Khalid said, real evidence that connects him to the plot. Otherwise, he's just my business partner, visiting his partner's wife in prison. Gert looks compassionate, not criminal. Rashid thought hard. Then an idea came to him. What if we make him think his plan is working, that he's gotten away with it? What do you mean? He thinks Princess Amara is taking all the blame. He thinks he's safe. But people make mistakes when they feel safe, when they think they've won. Rashid's eyes gleamed with an intelligence far beyond his years. What if we gave him a reason to celebrate, a reason to let his guard down? Prince Khalid leaned forward. I'm listening. The plan was risky, but elegant. Prince Khalid would announce publicly that he was dissolving his business partnership with Morrison, but not because of suspicion, because he was retiring from business entirely after his wife's betrayal. He needed time to heal, to reconsider his priorities. He would sell his share of their joint ventures to Morrison at a discounted price, wanting a clean break. To Morrison, this would look like victory. Not only had he eliminated his partner, but he was getting the entire business empire at a bargain price. He'd celebrate. And when people celebrated, they got careless. The announcement was made at a press conference. Prince Khalid played his role perfectly, looking tired and emotionally wounded. The media ate it up. Billionaire prince retreats from public life after wife's murder plot. Morrison's response was exactly what they'd hoped for. He expressed public sympathy, agreed to the buyout terms, and that evening he threw a private party at his penthouse. That's when Rashid made his move. The party was exclusive, invitation only, but Rashid had learned in his years on the street that rich people rarely paid attention to servants. He borrowed a catering uniform from Hassan's team, made himself look even smaller and younger than he was, and joined the catering staff serving at Morrison's penthouse. The apartment was obscenely luxurious, all modern glass and steel with a view of the Burj Khalifa. Guests mingled, drinking expensive champagne and congratulating Morrison on his successful business acquisition. Morrison himself was holding court on the balcony, clearly enjoying his moment. Rashid moved through the crowd with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, invisible as always. But his ears were open and his eyes were sharper than any security camera. He overheard fragments of conversation, Morrison bragging about his business acumen, guests commenting on how fortunate he was that the prince was stepping away. And then, around midnight, Morrison stepped into his private study with two men Rashid didn't recognize. Rashid found a service hallway that connected to the study. There was a ventilation grate near the ceiling, his old friend from the palace kitchen. He climbed up quickly and listened. "Can't believe it actually worked," one of the men was saying. "When you first proposed using Amara, I thought you were insane." Morrison's laugh was cold. The woman was pathetically easy to manipulate. Tell a vain, greedy woman that she deserves more, that her husband doesn't appreciate her, and she'll do anything. Add some romance, some promises of a life together, and she became the perfect weapon. And the poison? Oleander extract. Brilliant choice. It mimics a heart attack. If that street brat hadn't interfered, Khalid would have died looking like natural causes. No investigation, no suspicion. Amara would have inherited everything, and after a respectable mourning period, I'd have convinced her to sell me his business interests. Then I'd have disappeared and she'd have figured out I was never coming back. Instead, she's in prison. Better her than me. She can't prove I was involved. I was careful. Every communication was encrypted or in person. Every meeting looked legitimate. As far as anyone knows, I'm the innocent business partner, shocked and saddened by the whole affair. What about the investigation? I heard Khalid had hired private investigators before the attempt. Taken care of. The investigators met with an unfortunate accident yesterday. Car crash, very tragic, and all their files were destroyed in the fire. Whatever they found, it died with them. Rashid felt cold rage building in his chest. Morrison had murdered the investigators. This man was far more dangerous than they'd realized. "And now you own everything," the third man said. "The properties, the developments, the whole empire. Worth what? 3 billion? Closer to 4. And the best part, Khalid practically gave it to me. He wanted a clean break, a discount for a fast sale. The fool was so emotionally devastated he wasn't thinking clearly." Morrison's voice dripped with satisfaction. Sometimes the best weapon isn't a knife or a gun. It's people's own emotions. Rashid had heard enough. He climbed down silently and found Hassan waiting in the service area, monitoring through an earpiece. Rashid had been wearing a wire the whole time. "Did you get all that?" Rashid whispered. Hassan nodded grimly. "Every word. That's a confession to conspiracy to commit murder, actual murder of the investigators, and fraud. More than enough to arrest him." "Not yet," Rashid said. "We need more. He'll claim the recording is fake or taken out of context. We need him to do something that can't be denied. What do you have in mind?" Rashid thought for a moment. Then he remembered something from his time on the streets. Criminals always keep insurance, evidence against their partners in case they need leverage. If Morrison was careful enough to encrypt everything, he's careful enough to keep records. We need to find his insurance. Over the next 3 days, Rashid became Morrison's shadow. He followed him to meetings, to restaurants, to his private gym. He learned Morrison's routines, his habits, his patterns, and he noticed something interesting. Every day after his morning workout, Morrison went to a private storage facility in the commercial district. He always went alone, always stayed exactly 15 minutes, and always left looking satisfied. "That's where he keeps his insurance," Rashid told Prince Khalid and Hassan. "Whatever evidence he has against Amara, against anyone else he's worked with, it's in that storage unit. Breaking into a private storage facility is illegal," Hassan pointed out. "Anything we find couldn't be used in court." "What if we don't break in?" Rashid said slowly. "What if we make him bring it to us?" The final trap was elegant in its simplicity. Prince Khalid, through his lawyers, announced that he was having second thoughts about the business sale. New evidence had emerged about financial irregularities in their partnership. He was launching an official audit and possibly reversing the transaction. Morrison's response was immediate and panicked. He called an emergency meeting with his lawyers and brought with him a locked briefcase. Rashid, working with Hassan's surveillance team, watched from a distance. Inside that briefcase, they were certain, was Morrison's insurance. Documents that proved his involvement in various illegal activities, kept as protection in case his partners ever turned on him. He'd need them now to threaten Prince Khalid into backing down. But Morrison never made it to the meeting. As he drove through downtown Dubai, his car was pulled over by police for a routine traffic stop, except it wasn't routine. Hassan, using his authority and the recorded confession from the party, had obtained a warrant, not for Morrison himself, not yet, but for his vehicle, which had been identified in security footage near the location where the private investigator's car had crashed. The police found the briefcase, and when they opened it with Morrison sitting handcuffed in the back of a patrol car, they found everything. Documents detailing Morrison's embezzlement from the business partnership, communications with Princess Amara, clearly showing his manipulation and promises. Research on oleander poisoning and its effects, bank records showing payments to individuals who'd later acted as witnesses or facilitators. And most damning, evidence of the investigator's murder, including pre-written insurance claim forms and a burner phone with calls to a known criminal. Morrison had been so paranoid about his partners betraying him that he'd kept detailed records of every crime, every manipulation, every illegal act. His insurance had become his conviction. The trial lasted 3 months. Princess Amara offered a reduced sentence for testimony against Morrison, revealed everything. The affair that had started a year ago. Morrison's careful manipulation, convincing her that Prince Khalid would never divorce her, but was planning to change his will to cut her out completely. The plan to poison the prince gradually, making it look like natural decline. The promise of a life together once they'd claimed the fortune. Morrison's defense tried every tactic. They claimed the evidence was planted. They suggested Amara was lying to reduce her sentence. They argued Morrison was a respected businessman being railroaded by a vengeful prince. But the jury saw through it all. The recorded confession from the party, combined with the physical evidence from the briefcase and Amara's testimony, painted an undeniable picture. Richard Morrison was sentenced to life in prison without parole for conspiracy to commit murder, murder of the 2 investigators, fraud, and a dozen other charges. His assets were frozen and would eventually be distributed to his victims' families. Princess Amara received 15 years for attempted murder, with possibility of parole after 10. She would spend the best years of her life behind bars. But for Rashid, the real victory was different. It was the moment when Prince Khalid, after the verdict was read, looked at him and said, "You saved more than my life. You saved my faith in people." 2 years passed. Rashid threw himself into his studies with the same intensity he'd once applied to surviving on the streets. He excelled in every subject, particularly in business and law. Prince Khalid had been right. Rashid was brilliant when given the opportunity to shine. The prince, true to his word, treated Rashid not as a charity case but as family. He attended Rashid's school events, celebrated his achievements, guided him through the complex world of privilege and power that Rashid now inhabited. But Rashid never forgot where he came from. Once a week he volunteered at a shelter for homeless children in Dubai. He knew what they were going through, the fear and hunger and constant danger. He couldn't save them all, but he could help some of them find their way off the streets. On the 2nd anniversary of the day he'd crashed the feast, Rashid and Prince Khalid sat together on the palace balcony, watching the sun set over Dubai's glittering skyline. "Do you ever miss it?" the prince asked. "The freedom of the streets? No rules, no expectations?" Rashid considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity. Everything was clear. Find food, find shelter, survive another day. Now everything is complex. But I don't miss the hunger, or the fear, or feeling invisible. You were never really invisible, though, were you? You saw everything. You noticed what others missed. That gift hasn't changed. Maybe not. But now I can actually do something with what I see." Prince Khalid smiled. "Speaking of which, I have a proposition for you. I'm starting a new foundation, an organization that helps street children throughout the Middle East, not just giving them temporary shelter, but real opportunities. Education, job training, legal support. I want you to be part of it. When you're older, maybe even run it." Rashid felt his chest tighten with emotion. "Oh, you want me to help other kids like me? I want you to help kids like you used to be, because you're not that desperate child in the alley anymore. You're Rashid al-Rashid now. Yes, I officially adopted you last month. The papers came through. You're my son, my heir, and someday this will all be yours." Rashid had known the adoption was being processed, but hearing it confirmed made it real. He was no longer an orphan. He had a father again, a family. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me change some lives, starting with the boy I met yesterday. His name is Ahmed. He's 9 years old, been on the streets for 6 months. I saw him digging through garbage behind a restaurant and I thought of you. He's waiting downstairs now, scared and confused, probably convinced we're going to throw him out or call the police. Rashid stood up immediately. I'll talk to him. I know what he's feeling. As Rashid headed for the door, Prince Khalid called after him. Hey, son. Rashid turned. Yes? Thank you. For that day at the feast. For having the courage to speak up when it would have been safer to stay silent. You didn't just save my life. You taught me what real honor looks like. Rashid smiled. You gave me a reason to be brave, Your Highness. You could have dismissed me as just another street kid making wild accusations. But you listened. You believed. That changed everything. Downstairs in a small guest room, Ahmed sat on the edge of a chair, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. He wore clothes 3 sizes too big, borrowed from the palace staff. His hair was freshly washed, but he kept touching it nervously, unused to being clean. When Rashid entered, Ahmed jumped up, ready to run, but Rashid held up his hands in a gesture of peace. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Rashid. Are you going to send me back to the streets? No. Actually, I want to tell you a story. About a boy who was exactly where you are now. A boy who thought his life was over, that he'd always be hungry and scared. But then something happened that changed everything. Ahmed sat back down slowly. What happened? He saw something he shouldn't have, and he had to make a choice. Stay silent and safe, or speak up and risk everything. He chose to speak up. What happened to him? Rashid sat down next to Ahmed. He found a family. He found a purpose. He found out that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when you're terrified. Is this a true story? Very true. Because that boy was me, Ahmed. 2 years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are now. Scared, confused, convinced this was too good to be true. But it wasn't a trick. It was a second chance. Ahmed's eyes widened. You were on the streets? Like me? For 2 years. I know what it's like. The hunger that never goes away. The cold at night. The way people look through you like you don't exist. I know all of it. But you're dressed like a prince, because Prince Khalid gave me a chance, and now we want to give you the same chance. Not charity. A real opportunity to build a different life if you want it. Ahmed was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a small voice, he asked, What do I have to do? Just 3 things. First, believe that you deserve better. Second, work hard. Harder than you've ever worked, even harder than surviving on the streets. And third, when you're in a position to help someone else someday, pass it forward. Help the next kid who needs it. That's all. That's everything. Ahmed thought about it. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. That's all anyone can ask. That night, Rashid stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the city where he'd once been invisible. He thought about the chain of events that had brought him here. If he hadn't been hungry that day, he wouldn't have been behind the palace looking for food. If he hadn't noticed Princess Amara acting suspicious, he wouldn't have followed her. If he hadn't had the courage to speak up, Prince Khalid would be dead. So many small moments, each one critical, each one proof that one person's choice could change everything. His phone buzzed. A message from Hassan. Another street kid spotted near the market. 10-year-old girl. Looks like she's been alone for a while. Should we bring her in? Rashid typed back immediately. Yes, I'll talk to her tomorrow. Because this was his purpose now. Not just to survive, but to help others do more than survive, to help them thrive. As he got ready for bed in his luxurious room in his palace home, Rashid thought about the boy he'd been 2 years ago. Hungry, desperate, invisible. And he thought about the boy he was now. Educated, protected, seen. The same person, but completely transformed by compassion and courage. And somewhere in Dubai tonight, another child was sleeping in an alley, cold and hungry, and alone. But maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would be the day their life changed too. Because that's what Rashid had learned. Miracles weren't magic. They were choices. The choice to notice someone who needed help. The choice to take a risk for someone else. The choice to believe that things could be different. He'd made those choices. Prince Khalid had made those choices. And together they were building something that would outlast them both. A legacy of compassion, one rescued child at a time. And it had all started with 5 simple words from a starving orphan who refused to stay silent. "Don't eat that, your wife." 5 words that had saved a life, exposed a conspiracy, and proven that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths. Rashid smiled and turned off the light. Tomorrow he'd talk to Ahmed again, help him adjust to his new life. The day after that he'd meet the girl Hassan's team had found, and the day after that there would be another child who needed help. It was a big responsibility for a 13-year-old. But Rashid had learned something important. You don't have to be big or powerful or wealthy to change the world. You just have to care enough to try, and never, ever stay silent when you see something wrong. Even if you're just a poor boy with nothing but your voice and your courage, sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.